Les Misérables. This was a movie I really expected to be gushing over, and I like musicals, I like drama, like I've said repeatedly, I'm a sucker for the Disney moment, but I honestly wasn't too wowed by this. And that is really disappointing to me because, well, for the reasons I've said before, because you've got the play, you've got the cast, you've got the great songs, and while I haven't read the book or seen the musical, I figured, well, this could be an asset. All of this could be new for me, and I was excited for more personal reasons. I'm actually kind of a fan of Hugh Jackman. What woman on earth isn't? And I think he's talented, but you wouldn't know that from a lot of the movies he's been in. You'd think he was just a one-note, big, dumb action guy. So it was nice to see him in a movie like this where he wasn't pretty the whole time, and he showed that he could sing, but like I said, I was not impressed by Les Mis, so there, I said it. Come and get me, people. So the premise, in case you didn't know, was Jean Valjean has been jailed for 19 years for stealing a loaf of bread, and when he gets out, he finds trouble starting his life anew. So he's inspired by this kind bishop that he needs to become a better man. So in order to accomplish this, he breaks parole and changes his identity to become the mayor of a small town. And he also owns a factory, and the parole officer, Javert, pursues him for many years. And with this movie, it felt like the filmmakers, along with others that kind of adapt these hugely popular plays, books, art, were afraid to change anything and risk offending and alienating the fans. Kind of saw that in like Harry Potter and obviously Twilight, so it felt like kind of the same thing here. And so because they didn't change anything, I felt like I was watching a play without the warmth and liveliness of the theater that you get when you go. So as a result, I felt like they didn't use the platform of the movie enough. They had a few really great scenes and views of the Parisian skyline, but again, the whole time while we were watching this movie, I felt like they could do that on stage too, given a few creative flourishes. Or maybe that's because I have higher expectations after seeing the Phantom of the Opera on stage. Great show, worth seeing. Anyway, as a result, having never seen the work on stage or read the book, it doesn't seem to work too well here. For example, when Fantine loses her job at the factory, she pretty much goes from selling her hair and her teeth to being a prostitute in like 5 minutes. So as a result, I'm looking at these big emotional events thinking, wow, the French really don't waste any time, do they? And either the French doesn't waste any time or the film doesn't waste any time, but either way, her descent, it just felt too rushed, and so it robbed it of some of its emotions. And this movie was like 2.5 hours long, and like I said, almost every minute felt rushed. And also, I felt like I didn't really get a good sense of the characters. Well, the vast majority of the time, and to a certain extent, every character an artist creates, obviously, is going to exist to serve a certain function. But in this movie, I felt like the characters weren't really anything more than their functions. You were basically given just enough information about them so they could serve their function, but nothing really beyond that. I felt like that was a real shame because even the villain Javert I found really fascinating. I want to know more about him and more of his experiences, but none to be had here. And it left me wanting more, not in a good way, basically. And that's related to another complaint I have about the movie, and it's about the songs. I enjoyed so many of the songs in here, pretty much all of them, but a lot of the songs, I also felt like I was listening to a clip of the song. I wanted more of those songs too. I wanted a song, not TRL, where they only play a little bit of the song. And anyway, so throughout this movie, like I said, left me wanting more, not in a good way. And the lovers in this movie, Fantine's child Cosette, and her love interest, I know this is a big part of 19th century literature for the characters to kind of kind of meet and just fall in love. Marius, that's the one. And fall in love, but Cosette and the Marius character, hope I'm pronouncing that right, they're in love and they live happily ever after, but like I said, these two lovers, they meet one day and hardly share any time together or talk. And Disney's Snow White feels more realistic than these two, and the prince just sings to Snow White. Snow White doesn't even talk to the prince, I don't think. And when you surround these lovers, these supposedly perfect lovers, with as much death and poverty and issues in general, your love story had better have a bit of substance to it. And that goes into some, and like I said, so that's my main complaint. The movie felt rushed, the character's not really fleshed out. It felt like this movie had ADD, and kind of further reasons why the characters didn't feel like more than a sum of their functions. So, to risk spoiling you, if you don't want to know anything else, maybe put this on mute for a minute or two. A whole lot of people, there's a lot of death in this movie, and that's why it felt to me like the filmmakers had ADD, because like they were tossing them over their shoulder, like, oop, this character served their function, bye, bye. It felt like they were just being tossed aside like that, and that quickly. So during one death that was supposed to be very emotional and all that, I was just thinking, oh, just die already, you know? And not good. And another potential spoiler, they talk about the flight of the poor and how this mini revolution in the film is for them, but at the same time, the movie, it gives a little intro about why the era was so turbulent, but nothing about how this insurrection helped or aided or affected people. And they seem to forget pretty quickly about it after it happens, along with the poor people that they were talking about, and that populated the movie. So I would give this a pretty average review, except for one thing, basically. The incredibly talented cast that did such a great job of pulling you in, despite the limitations that I've mentioned. And I read something that said that the filmmakers actually had all these actors actually sing their lines in every take, and it really shows. And like I said, the cast made it really emotional. A lot of people were crying and sniffling. I heard a lot of that in the theater, actually, a lot of sniffles. And hey, if anyone mentions they saw me tear up, you can't prove that, ever. And people, after I got to the theater, people were singing these songs after they came out, and they were in my head too a long time. Like when Anne Hathaway's character Fantine sings "I Dreamed a Dream," just to use one example, that is an incredibly emotional moment. So, and they did have some great comic relief in the form of Sacha Baron Cohen and Helena Bonham Carter as Mr. and Mrs. Thénardier. They were fantastic whenever they showed up in the movie. So you do get some comic relief here, people. And honestly, from what I read, this has kind of always been the case of Les Mis, from the novel and even to the musical itself to a certain extent, I think. And it'll probably be the case with this movie. From the very beginning of when Les Mis started, the critics hated it or gave it mixed reviews, but the public loved it. They loved the novel, they loved the musical, and I think a lot of people will love this movie too. So, and let's be fair, if I didn't have that small part of me that was somehow incapable of enjoying myself fully, I probably wouldn't be a critic now, would I? And so I guess like I said, in my opinion, final verdict, the cast pulled it up slightly above average. So I would give it a B+, I suppose. Actually make that a B-. Hey, girl, I'm allowed to change my mind.